This is the Digitone Keys. If the name didn't give it away, it's a new keyboard version of the Digitone building on the legacy from the analog keys as well as the mono machine. Now under the hood we still have the same 8-voice FM synthesizer capable of those classic FM sounds, but also a lot more. So this is the Digitone Keys, and it's very reminiscent of Electron's older synth, the mono machine, that had this keyboard on the side of it. That's why it has this sort of original or maybe a little quirky look. So what we have here is the Digitone, pretty much the same deal as with the standalone square unit. And we have an excellent keyboard. It has 37 keys. They are semi-weighted with aftertouch. I know a lot of you will be asking about that. We also have a bunch of new controls. For example, these 8 knobs over here that have both a predefined destination, for example, ratio, harmonics, and mix and cutoff and resonance. You can also user assign them to different destinations. And then we have quick controls over here, for example, enabling portamento, hold, arpeggiator. You can do different splits of the keyboard, for example. You can enable chords mode, for example, playing different chords. So there's a ton of new performance features here that are quite useful. Then if we take a look over here, we actually have a mod wheel and a pitch wheel. They are both assignable. So you can have each of them control 5 parameters, and this goes for the aftertouch as well. It's the same with aftertouch. You can assign it to 5 parameters. And we also have something over here which is new. Individual outputs, individual track outputs in stereo, which can be really handy for anybody doing a hardware synth setup where you want to have more control over the individual tracks. We also have control inputs similar to those on the analog Rhythm Mark II, for example, that you can use to input CV into the unit and control parameters that way. All of this coming together, the additional controls, the outputs, the mod and pitch wheels that are assignable, makes for an excellent performance instrument. It's very similar to something like the analog keys, but of course with the 8 voices of the Digitone. So let's make a new pattern here from scratch. So I like to start by making a drum beat. Let's make it on channel 1. And we're basically going to sound lock a bunch of things. So when I turn this knob here, we can select different sounds that I've loaded into the RAM. Here's a kick. Not sure if I like that one. This one's better. Let's change the tempo. Like 107 maybe. Let's move it around a bit. Let's do some parameter locks on it. Changing the filter per step. Let's find a snare drum. The kick to be a little bit more, yeah, let's parameter lock some drive to it as well. Let's do some kind of shaker. I know I have a really nice shaker that I loaded before. We're still just working with 16 steps, and I think it goes to show what you can do with the interesting sequencer here. So you have this here. Let's put down, yeah, let's change that to a condition. So let's put it for 41%. So it will only trigger 41% of the time. Let's do a little, maybe a little, let's pan it a bit. Let's go into the master here. Let's add some overdrive. So we have a drum groove here with just one track. Now let's find something that we can, yeah, let's do like a bass on top of it maybe. Now that we have this bass here, we can of course use the knobs here to change things up on the fly. And we can also go into user mode and set it up so we can control whatever we want. So hold function, press this here, and we get into user config menu. And here you have the 8 knobs, and you can just pick say number 1 here, and you can choose from a bunch of destinations that you want to affect using this first knob over here, for example. And also what is very cool is that when you hold this down, you can see here that I'm switching between default and user mode. We actually have a graphical representation of what the knobs are doing. So here at default, you can see that we have, for example, ratio A, ratio B, we have the frequency. So if I play something and change it. If I go in here and I change the first parameter here to, yeah, let's say pitch all instead, and we go back, you can now see that when we move into the user mode, we have pitch here. And I do think that this is one of the coolest things with Electron workflow. It's just a tight integration, how everything is so seamless and it's so well made. It's just very, very tight. There are very few flaws in it. And of course, when you're jamming, you can just do function and yes to save the pattern, and then we can jam. So this is very cool, very quick and handy. You can change stuff up and you can just reload the pattern again to a previous state if you want to. So we have this bell sound here. And let's enable Arpeggiator. And if you hold function and ARP, you go into menu. You can see how I've set it up. It's kind of cheesy, but yeah, let's just run with it. Enable the metronome. Now for the ARP, I want to set up the mod wheel here. So we're going to sounds and we go into setup, and down here you'll find the modulation wheel. And here we have 5 destinations. So let me select something here. So now we have filter frequency, the algorithm, we have detuning that we all control using the mod wheel here. And now I want to set up the aftertouch. Go in here, sounds, setup, and we have aftertouch, and it's the same deal here. You can set it up to 5 different destinations. So one thing I like to do is set it up to pitch. And let's do negative filter frequency. So after playing this synth for a couple of days, I can say that it's actually a really good experience. The keyboard, the keypad is nice, feels hefty, feels well built. The unit is much heavier than you might actually think. Feels very well built. Of course, knobs and buttons are the same, very clicky. The knobs are still quite sensitive and they require a lot of precision when you're turning them. The mod and the pitch wheel feels really nice, well built, sturdy. And I do feel that having the additional controls as well as the keyboard is very useful for anybody who wants to do live performances. And if you've been looking at the Digitone but you haven't really felt the square form factor, this is quite different. It's quite different working with it. Now sometimes it does feel a little weird moving over from the keyboard to the side to program stuff, and coming from the analog keys that had the button layout basically over the keyboard, I sometimes feel that's more natural when you're working with it. However, since I'm a former analog keys user, I can say that having the 8 voices and the digital engine does lend itself really well to performing with a keyboard. Sometimes I felt like the analog keys was excellent in design, but the 4 voices, the analog voices, was a little bit limiting. So here I feel that a keyboard makes a lot of sense, and this will probably replace the Digitone in my setup. Yamaha MODX, or MODX as I usually call it, is definitely a superb performance synth or keyboard. It can do a wide range of sounds from pianos, organs, strings to emulations of analog synth sounds. It also sports a deep FM engine building on the legacy of the old DX synthesizers. More versatile than the Digitone Keys, but to me it lacks the original character of the Digitone's sound, as well as its deep sequencer. While the MODX sports a large keyboard, the keyboard on the Digitone Keys is definitely of a higher quality, and it has aftertouch. Another new synth which could be interesting is the Minilogue XD. It's a 4-voice analog synth with 2 analog oscillators and 1 digital. The keybed is really nothing to write home about. It's slim keys or mini keys, but the workflow of this unit and the sound is superb. It's nice if you want to blend analog and digital. It offers an arpeggiator and a sequencer, but the Digitone Keys simply outperforms the XD in these 2 areas, offering a much deeper and more complex sequencer and arpeggiator. For a cheaper alternative, the Microfreak from Arturia is a good choice. It sports multiple oscillator types, from emulations of analog sounds to FM. It has a sequencer and an arpeggiator, but yet again, they are not on the level of the Digitone Keys. It also doesn't come close in terms of build quality and lacks the quote-unquote real keys. The Microfreak also lacks onboard effects, something which the other synths mentioned here in the list all have. For more information on these synths, see my coverage of them, linked in the description. Chances are that you're watching this when I'm at Superbooth in Berlin, a synth event, and this video was obviously not shot there. I had the good fortune of having the unit shipped here early so I could check it out and give my opinion on it. But I do want to thank Reverb.com. It's a site where you can buy and sell used gear as well as new gear and software, and I'll put their link down in the description. They're sponsoring my Superbooth trip together with all the patrons over at patreon.com/Bobeats. Thank you so much for helping out. If you want to go and check out Reverb, you can do that. If you want to go and check out my Patreon, you can do that as well. So talk to you later.